Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Holly Anderson, and I am the intern for the Office of Student Inclusion and Involvement on Edgewood College. Today, we're going to be talking about constitutions. So for a quick overview, we're going to go through creating or revamping your constitution, understanding position descriptions, and using your constitution in the everyday. So constitutions. This is really a document that guides your organization by laying out the framework for how it will operate. Constitutions are the foundation of an organization and are essential for fair treatment of its members, as well as gives them power in the group. Organizations should do their best to closely follow their constitution or change it if it does not reflect current practices. In addition, orgs should follow their constitution as they often help protect its members from falling into certain legal trouble. On this slide, you can see an example of what a typical student organization constitution will look like, including the different articles and kind of listing the organization title at the top. So what is a constitution? Now, this is going to be specific for any groups that are new or thinking about starting a new org on Edgewood. So it really is a document containing an outline for the organization's mission, position within the organization, and the governing procedures of that organization. Edgewood College also expects your group to include a non-discriminatory statement, which I will show you later. The Constitution establishes how changes are to be made in the organization, who can make these changes, and how changes are officially approved. I'll now go through the typical articles that you would see in a Constitution. However, I would like to note that though these are highly recommended articles to have, not every org is going to need them all, and other orgs may even need more than what you're going to see here, especially depending on the org's mission, their work, what they're doing with the community, as well as if they have a national affiliation. So for example, if it's a customer service-based organization, they might not need to have an entire article dedicated to how customer service functions within their org. But first and foremost, Article 1, name of the organization. Pretty simple. The name you should select should be appropriate for your organization and just appropriate all around, as well as it cannot be used by another recognized student organization. A tip here I would suggest is anytime you can make a fun anagram out of the name. So for example, I work at UW Whitewater with our student orgs there, and there's a group that is called DICE, and it's Diversity in STEM Education. So that's always fun. They're DICE, and it's a nice, easy, simple way for students to find them, and good for marketing, branding, recruitment, things like that. So Article 2, purpose of the organization. Purpose statements should be clear and concise. It should be a description of the organization that can be used by the university to describe who you are and what you intend to accomplish. Again, another tip here, a good reason to keep this clear and concise is you really want to make sure that every member of your organization can easily say what the org is about when talking to any type of stakeholders, interested or hopefully future members. You want to make sure that that promotion is staying consistent, and the way to do that is having this clear and concise purpose of the organization. So Article number 3, membership. When defining membership in your organization, please consider the following. How does someone know if they're a member of your organization? So looking at this in greater context would be, is a member still a member if they only come once a year or if they come once a semester? Does a member have to be more active than that? Just some things to consider, as well as what are the privileges of membership for your organization? So here, a lot of times we see typical privileges being eligibility for input in the org's business, the ability to vote in elections, and the ability to help make changes to the Constitution. Going back to that non-discriminatory statement that you need, it's listed here at the bottom, so I'll just read through it. Please understand that no recognized student organization may discriminate on the basis of race, color, gender, creed, religion, age, ancestry, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, political affiliation, marital status, Vietnam-era veteran status, parental status, or pregnancy. A few other questions to keep in mind is when it comes to membership is, does your org charge a membership fee? Here we have to make sure to not violate any of the all consumers laws. So again, making sure if you, for example, are a Democratic Party, aren't saying no, members that are Republican can't pay to be a part of your organization. And then another good question to keep in mind is, do you plan to use any type of membership application form? Google Forms are free and very easy to use. Sometimes it's a nice way to track and get the contact information. So you have the emails for your members, so you can email out meeting notes and other different things pertaining to the org. Moving into Article 4, organizational leadership or officers. Most organizations need individuals to serve in leadership capacities and facilitate the business of the organization. Many organizations may choose the traditional leadership roles like president, vice president, secretary, or treasurer. Other organizations may choose differently. So for here, there are a few things you want to consider. The number of leadership roles that you have and the name and titles of each of them, like the ones we just went through. The function of each role, very important here, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The term in office, so are they there for 1 term, 2 terms? What does that term look like? And as well as time of year that your elections are held. It's a good thing to put into your constitution in this area. Who is eligible to run for office? So this could be a good one. Again, if we're defining membership and you want to run for a position, does that person have to be a member for so long? Does that person have to be, can they be an incoming student, a first year student? Should they have at least a semester under the way? Really thinking about, who is eligible to run. The big one we see is, not that this is the way you should do it, but sometimes to serve as president, you have to serve in a prior leadership role like treasurer, VP, secretary, something like that. And then last but not least, what constitutes removal for office and what does that procedure look like? It's really important to have this section in here. A lot of times when I'm consulting with student orgs at UW-Whitewater, I'll have students who come to me and they're not sure, maybe somebody's not doing the defined roles and they've consistently had an issue with that person. So really having defined in your constitution what those responsibilities are so that the person who's taking on that knows what to expect out of themselves and to expect for being in that role in that org, and then two, how to go about it if that person is not upholding that portion of the roles. So moving into Article 5, election of organizational leadership and election of officers. This procedure will be used to determine the leadership for your organization. Therefore, it is important that your process is fair to all parties involved. Consider carefully the procedure you want to establish regarding the selection of students for leadership roles. So here, there's a few things that we'll want to consider as well. So questions to consider would be, what should the term of office be? Is a term of office 1 semester, 1 academic year, 1 full year? When does a term begin and end? Are you going spring to spring to fall, fall to spring? Who is eligible for a leadership role? We kind of touched on that in Article 4. How should those who are interested in becoming candidates do so? Do they nominate themselves? Do others have to nominate them? Is there a prior date to elections where nominations are closed and can no longer be accepted? When are elections held? Always a good one. A lot of times I see orgs do annual, especially if your term of office is a year or a calendar year, then they vote like every April or they vote every September at the beginning of a year. And then also considering what voting procedure is used, how to handle things like a tie vote, as well as are there a minimum number of members who have to participate in elections. So for example, if you're an org of, let's say 50 students, do you have to have at least 25 students there to be able to vote? Do you need more? Do you need less? Etc. Moving on to Article 6, your meetings. So organizational meetings are where the official business of the organization will take place. Consider the following questions when writing your constitution. How often do you want your org to meet? And who can call or schedule an official meeting of the organization? Is that any member? Is that has to be a student in the leadership positions? Those types of things. Article number 7, your advisor. So every recognized student org are required to have an Edgewood College employee serve as the advisor to their organization. Generally, the advisor serves in a voluntary capacity to provide advice and continuity to the members of the student organization. It is helpful to outline the role and section and ratification procedure for the advisor in this Constitution. So here we might see things like an advisor must attend one meeting every semester to stay in touch. Advisors don't typically vote for things because these are student organizations, so sometimes outlining that there so that they're just very clear of what that is. Just what is that relationship you want with your advisor? What do you think that you need? And this is where you would outline it. It's also really good to note that every student org also has a staff advisor from OSI, so again, from the Office of Student Inclusion and Involvement. And it tends to be, right now, it's Shauna Brown Riviera, or whoever is in that director position. So moving into Amendment 8, moving into Article 8, amending the Constitution. It is important to establish a process to amend the Constitution. Some amendments will have the support of nearly all the membership, while other amendments will generate divided opinions among the membership. Therefore, it is important to establish a process that is fair and easily understood. So things to consider in this section is how are amendments placed on the agenda? When does a notice need to be given so far ahead of time? For example, if you are voting on something, do you have to tell your members a month in advance, one meeting in advance, 2 weeks in advance? What does that look like? And then also, how many members must be, again, present or participate in the vote to determine it has been approved or not. So similar with elections, how many people have to be there? So giving different numbers this time, if you're an org of 10, is it okay that only 1 or 2 of you are there, or really should all 10 of your members be there? All of them present, 80% of your members should be there present. Kind of looking at how big your org is where you're going to have to kind of set those boundaries. But again, amending the Constitution is a great way that as you grow, you have these amendments in place so that you can continue to change and develop with the growth of your organization. And then lastly, the last thing to consider would be how many people have to be in favor of it to pass. Is it 50% plus 1, 2/3, 3/4? What is that? All right, so that was the, again, typical articles that we see in a constitution. Now moving into our organizational leadership and getting to know your student org positions. So we're going to go through president, vice president, and treasurer, secretary, public relations, and others. So you'll see president, vice president, and treasurer are all starred, and that's because these are the 3 that are necessary to be a student org on Edgewood's campus. Your president and vice president might be titled something else, depending on the functionality of your org. However, treasurer tends to be always a treasurer. It's also important to note that as I go through these different positions, every different org, again, depending on your mission and what you're doing, is going to be different of what you need. So I'll just give brief examples of all of them, but you definitely could change as gets updated. You add, again, a good example is always community service, something you maybe hadn't done before, but you're adding, so that might be a new role. So now let's look at the different positions types and brief descriptions. So for president, typically what you see for someone in this position would be to organize, plan, and to work to ensure the continuation and overall success of the organization. They can call meetings of the officers and delegate responsibilities as needed, call meetings of the organization members, and assist all leadership roles as necessary. Moving into vice president, a lot of times we see them serving as a liaison between general members and officers. They can always be looking for new ways to recruit members. They can assist the president in fine-tuning event details. And she'll take on the duties and responsibilities of the president, of course, if they have an absence. When looking at the treasurer, oftentimes we see that they manage all financial transactions of the organization, they prepare the annual budget, receive and distribute organizational funds, and to submit an annual financial summary of expenditures to the members of the organization. So again, these are the three primary ones. Each role can look different depending on your organization. These are really just basic descriptions of what these roles can serve. I definitely encourage in your constitution to have each role laid out and what those expectations are. So again, if someone's not meeting those expectations, you have clear guidelines to go from there. And also just when you are having new members join your leadership positions, they have a good idea, good position description on what that they are committing to. So for secretary, they're often recording the minutes of each meeting and sending out copies of those minutes to all of the members and typically advisors. And they also email members about various events and activities. So really just fine-tuning and holding on to responsible for all the ongoings of the org and communicating those. Quite often, we're seeing a lot more organizations choose to have a public relations like chair or vice president. And in this position, we see that they're serving as the organizational archivist. So just kind of keeping track of everything that people have been doing. They're responsible for all the transactions of the organizational correspondence via email, social media, and other. And again, that kind of helps with their keeping track of everything that the org is doing. Then they can talk about that on social media and really make sure that they're promoting everything, all the awesome things that student orgs do. And then they often oversee the organization's social media pages because of that to keep a consistent voice. Not that others can't help with that, but really having one person to sit and be responsible so that things are constantly and actively be going out. This is where I really see the difference of orgs that, start really strong at the beginning of the semester and then kind of fade out over the semester as people get busy. When you have someone who's dedicated to doing this role and it doesn't just rely on a president or a vice president, you have someone who can dedicate that amount of time to it and really keep the org engaged and active all semester long. And then each student organization has its own unique mission and reason for existing at Edgewood. This could mean that there are other roles and student organizations need to take to consideration for their org to function at its highest level. So we're going to go through these next. So again, a few other ones that we see that are common now to have in, or becoming more common, I should say, in student organizations. We see a fundraising chair as well. So they facilitate the commitments for all fundraising ideas and activities, and they oversee and manage activities having direct correlation with fundraising. So putting on your bake sales, your different sponsorships, connecting with those, doing any kind of donation drives, just anything that the org is pulling in funds or donations. They're overseeing that, planning that, making all of those, not that they're doing it alone, but just they're really being that touch point person for making sure that it is everything's occurring. So if you're in a small org, this might be a lot easier. But if you're in a larger org, you might also see like a fundraising committee too that they form and then head that committee. We also are seeing recruitment and retention chair positions where this person is keeping record of all their member attendance. They're reaching out to new members to coordinate further organizational activities. And then they're organizing and managing new member information sessions for potential new members and learning more about the organization. Great way for just making sure that your org is constantly and actively gaining new members. But the other side too is definitely keeping them too. So a lot of times this person will send like thank you notes at the end of the semester to all your orgs or be in charge of just, keeping your members around. So again, I find it really highly important in an organization. You can't exist if you don't have members coming in, and you can't exist if you don't have happy members staying throughout your semester and years. And then lastly, the one I've used as an example a lot, but the community service chair position. This one will be one where they oversee and manage activities having direct correlation with community service, serving as a liaison for charitable organizations which you are donating your time and money to. So coordinating who's doing different or volunteer opportunities, making sure you send reminders to your org members who are coming, taking those commitments, keeping track of those commitments from your org, reaching out to your community partners. If you're doing a donation drive, taking those in and making sure that you're working with the PR person to get good publicity for your org, those types of things. All right. So last but not least, Constitution and using it in your everyday. So a lot of times when I advise student orgs, I see a lot of different things that will come up that are directly translated back to the Constitution, but many org members forget, or org leaders forget, that that's already written or that's already there. Especially when you have a strong Constitution, it's easy to go back and be like, oh, this is how we can handle this situation. So here's just a couple examples I pulled. So for example, voting. I often see that when a student's stepping down or stepping back from a role in the, like maybe it's mid-semester, that we get an email stating like, oh, so-and-so is now president, or hey, I'm now president and I need help here. But it's really important to make sure, did that person come into the presidency appropriately? Did someone just say that they are now? Was it voted upon? Making sure that everyone's getting a fair chance. You never know who might want to be in a new role until you ask. So just having, making sure that people know that they can nominate, again, themselves or nominate each other, depending on how you set it up in your Constitution. And then going through those steps to make sure that you're never having any so to say, bad blood between members. If someone didn't feel like they were fairly given a chance to be in a role, or someone was unfairly made into that new leadership position. And then that kind of comes down to a lot of times to addendums. Something that you you are joining us and you're an existing org and you're like, hey, I really need that PR position. Checking your Constitution, seeing how to make that amendum. It's not just for the advisor and the president to do, or just a couple of the student leaders. You should really involve your entire membership when you're making any addendums to make sure that all perspectives are being taken into consideration and that it's really going to benefit and move forward the organization. We also see accountability. Definitely have touched upon that quite a bit, but making sure, as a student leader, not following through on their work. You can definitely use your Constitution to understand what the steps need to be taken next to address that are. So these are those really hard conversations. We are all human. We all get incredibly busy. Certain times of our semester can be really busy with classes. Trust me, as a grad student, I feel that as well. But, we are making the commitment to these orgs. It's something that if you have a well laid out position description in your Constitution, then hopefully there's a very good understanding of what that means and that somebody is committing to a position that they can handle. But, that's not always the case. And having that conversation and knowing, is there a probationary period for that person so that they can get through midterms or finals and then maybe take on that role? Do they step down for a little bit? And a VP steps up in their place. This is assuming it's a president. It doesn't need to be a president to do this, but just making sure that accountability is there via your Constitution. And then last but not least is really staying mission focused. A lot of times there's so many great ideas from people, especially your new members or just members in general, who really want to do something. They found it's really cool. They've created this really close bond with you. It's their org is where they belong, but maybe what their idea isn't that it is specific to your org's mission. So it's always good to make sure that when you're planning your events and starting new projects, you're looking back at that mission. Does it really align with what you're doing? Does it make sense to have that there? If it doesn't and you feel like it's really important and you should have that in your mission, then it might be a good time to go back to addendums and to change that mission a little bit or update it so it's a little bit more inclusive or more all-encompassing. But definitely making sure, it's a great way too to be like, oh, if you're a soccer club and you want to do, something that has to do with, I don't know, crafting a workbench or something, is that really true to what you're doing? What would your members gain out of that? Is that a good idea to have, or should you stick with your mission focused and do something that could be really fun and more related to soccer? So thank you so much for joining. At this time in the situation that we are, we do ask that instead of using phone, you email us at osi@edgewood.edu. If you have any specific questions for me, you can definitely contact me. Again, my name is Holly Anderson, and I spell that Holly and then Anderson. A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N. And you can definitely contact me too. My email is my last name, Anderson, so ANDERSON22@uww.edu. Thank you so much again. Hope you have a great rest of your day.